Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. As promised, of course, I wanted to do another lecture on Chapter 1. So Chapter 1 is our overview lecture with regards to the course, Introduction to Medical Law and Ethics and Bioethics. This PowerPoint's a little dated, but it's pretty much the same information. I'm hopeful that I can find the updated PowerPoint slides here in the near future and share those, but the good thing about this class is you're not tested on the PowerPoint. You're tested on what I talk about in the lectures and what's discussed in the book. So you're going to be given the right tools to be successful. So don't stress about that. Everything that you hear in this lecture and in the lecture prior is items that you need to be aware of and make sure that you're understanding. So if you have any questions related to that, just let me know. I'm happy to help. All right, so the first question that we're going to ask ourselves was, why do we study law and ethics and bioethics? So illegal activity is almost always unethical, right? But there are some examples in history, right? The civil rights movement would be one where illegal activity was certainly not unethical, and those laws have changed, right? Which is a great thing. So basic understanding of law is going to help apply to you from the perspective of being great at what you do in the medical field, and it's going to help you protect patients from poor care. All right. It also helps prevent lawsuits and employer challenges from that perspective. So both personal and professional, and the organization, and you can assist in making decisions in the best interest of the organization, yourself, and the patient. And we do live in a society that is very litigious, right? There's lawsuits that happen all the time, so be aware of that. What is medical law? Medical law addresses the legal rights and obligations that affect patients. It provides guidance, or they say a yardstick, I say guidance, to measure or judge actions, and it also helps punish those who act in unlawful ways. Laws or actions are prescribed by government authority and have binding legal force, so you can be held accountable for them. And there's examples related to that. I'm sure all of you are like, yeah, I understand that, but that's what medical law is. Just like any other element of the law, there are historical differences, right? You're going to see cases out there that might be surprising to you, and that's one of the reasons why we have a case review and something that we write on, right? Our paper and presentation that will be coming up in future weeks. All right, Medical Practice Acts. So another thing from the perspective of Medical Practice Acts is how medicine should be practiced in each state. Each state's going to have things they do a little differently. In the state of Washington, it's going to function different than where I'm originally from in Alabama. So there's going to be some differences, and I actually talk about this in a way with you in the future. You know, how about this? This is a good example. How are minors treated? So in some states, minors have to have parental consent for some treatment. In Washington State, they're a little more progressive, so you don't have to have minor consent for all areas of treatment. So there's some treatment areas that minors can get treated without parental consent, and that's something that's confusing, but it's out there, of course, so be aware of that. Ethics. So ethics is a part of philosophy. It's a branch of philosophy. People study it, and it's related to morals, principles, and judgment. Morality, in its broad term, is being virtuous and practicing with conducts that's appropriate. So making sure that, of course, that you practice in a way that is appropriate to what you're doing, right? Ethics also is partially empathy, right? Being concerned with actions and practices that improve the welfare of people in a moral, standard way. Ethics. And then medical ethics talks about issues related to practice of medicine. So how do people practice medicine in an appropriate way to deliver the best care for patients? What is utilitarianism? I know you've already heard about this, but I'll give a broader review. It's the greatest good for the greatest number of people, right? It's the majority, right? It impacts of actions on welfare of society as a whole rather than just merely the individual. So the ends justify the means, and I'm thinking of an example. You could use COVID as an example. A lot of people have said the lockdowns were a part of utilitarianism when the thought was in a global perspective, right? Not being out in public helped the greatest number of people. However, there's not been studies related to that quite yet, so that's probably not the best example. But there's a lot of other examples out there related to this concept. Oh, there's an example right here. I meant to go to the next slide, but this is a great segue. An example could be Medicare, right? Medicare does a lot of good for a lot of people, provides health care coverage. Now remember, Medicare is when you reach a certain age or you have a debilitating illness, you're eligible for it at that point. But its weaknesses are the rights of some people, such as poor or ill, may be ignored, right? Can have bias. But it does a lot of good for a lot of number of people, right? Because it provides healthcare services for the elderly and also helps people transition their life from, basing their health insurance maybe on a commercial payer at the beginning when they're employed, or maybe from Medicaid to Medicare. But there are weaknesses, but of course, globally or nationally, it's a positive thing. So rights-based ethics, what does this mean? So from that perspective, what is rights-based ethics? So it's emphasis on the individuals and all their rights, and rights belong to all people, not just segments of people, not just people with money, not just people with class, right? It's everyone. And it may result in individual or selfish behavior or even anarchy, right? You hear about that a lot in the news. That's not really something that would be a test question, but something to keep in mind. Duty-based ethics. Now this focuses on performing a duty and explores what duties are in relation to the medical profession, right? Its weaknesses are difficult to know because it's dependent on one's duty, right? What that one person is doing, what their standards are in the care that they deliver to patients, as an example for healthcare. Justice, right? It's based on the veil of ignorance to allow decision makers to be impartial in their decisions. What are its weaknesses? It could be unfair for the health to is it unfair for the health to subsidize the unhealthy? So it's unfair for the healthy is what it's supposed to say. Is it unfair for the healthy to subsidize those that are unhealthy? So that's saying, hey, let's talk about the Affordable Care Act, since that's passed in 2010, right? So of course it provides care at a discounted rate to people who can't afford it, and the people that can't afford it pay a little more. But this is saying in justice-based ethics, maybe the weakness is it fair for someone to pay more when someone's paying less? That's something that you have to think about from the veil of ignorance to allow people to be impartial in their decisions. That's a complicated question, right? However, when we talk about the national good, maybe from that perspective, it's moving in the right direction. What is virtue-based ethics? It's emphasis on people, not only on decisions, and it's based on character traits. Good habits are an example: fairness, honesty, courage, justice, seeking good life. And weaknesses: a person may become too trusting or complacent. All right. So what are some values that drive ethical behavior? Beneficence, right? Fidelity, gentleness, tolerance, work, perseverance, responsibilities, all values that drive ethical behavior. So how do you act around people? What are your interpersonal connections with people that show ethics, right? Respect, integrity, compassion, empathy, all those things are ways that you interact with patients, as an example, that show ethical behavior. Of course, in this challenge, there can be workplace issues, but if you act with interpersonal ethics, those, of course, are going to be held in line. But privacy and confidentiality in healthcare is essential. We'll talk about this as time goes on, but HIPAA, right? HIPAA's there for a reason, to protect people's confidentiality, especially patients, and we want to make sure that we give them the privacy that they deserve. All right, how do you know when there's an ethical dilemma? 7 steps here. So first off, you determine the facts. Second, you define the precise ethical issue at play. Third, you identify major principles, rules, and values that we talked about prior, right? You specify the alternatives, number 4. Number 5, you compare the values and alternatives. So what should I do here? Then you assess the consequences depending on what decision is made. And then you make a decision that's in the best interest of you, the patient, and the organization. So that's a 7-step model. It's been around for a long time. All right, we're not going to talk about Dr. Bernard Lowe's clinical model. You totally can if you want to take a look at that. There's a lot of great resources online about it as well. I like this 3-step model. Pretty simple. Is it legal? Is it balanced? And how does it make me feel? So that's a good question that you can ask in any challenging situation that you're in, right? First off, is it legal? If you answer yes, move on to the next question. Is it balanced? Does one person benefit more than the other? All right, that's a good question to ask. And then, how does it make you feel? Does it make you feel good? Make you feel bad? Maybe it's something that you need to sit on for a little while. Maybe it's not something you have to make a decision on right away. I like the 3-step model. I would add in there, though, step number 4, taking time to think if you can in an appropriate situation. All right. Ethics is not, of course, it's not just about how you feel. It's not just about the sincerity of your beliefs, because everybody's beliefs can be different, right? It's not just an emotional response, and it's not just based on religion, right? Ethics is doing the best for the greatest number of people, like utilitarianism, right? It's a complicated philosophy that it's going to mean something different for everyone. That's why we have laws in place, right, to align people, because people are going to have a different moral perspective, and then we need to make sure that society functions in a way that's productive, and that's why there's laws. Bioethics: moral dilemmas and issues resulting from advanced medicine, medical research related to life. Stem cell research would be an example. Cloning, gene therapy, right? Bioethics. I know a lot of you have heard of the Terry Schiavo case. A lot of people have written about that, but at what point do you call it in relation to when someone's going through a really complicated situation and their prognosis is not good? End-of-life care is something that's very complicated, especially in the United States. That's where the majority of cost of healthcare comes from. At what point do we say we're running out of money in relation to the healthcare system and not able to deliver care for those in need based on the challenges that we have with end-of-life care from the perspective of limited prognosis or no prognosis? That is an example of bioethics. There's not a right or wrong answer. It's just some judgment that people have to make and examine case by case. So that is bioethics. And I am not one to make a decision either way, right? A lot of times in hospitals, you have ethics committees to help with this, right? They can advise people. In our region, of course, in my full-time job, I do have the benefit of working with ethics committees to make sure that we're doing things in a responsible and ethical manner, and to take complex cases to them for review. Quality assurance, there's usually a quality department within the hospital, and that is something that's really helpful from the perspective of patient care and making sure we deliver the appropriate outcomes to each patient. So they help examine results from patient care, all right? And then etiquette, right? How do you act, right, in the healthcare setting? So are you acting with rules, standards, and professional behavior? Always remember, etiquette plays into ethics. If you don't have proper etiquette, people are not going to see the ethics that you display. So make sure you remember what that stands for. While it's different than ethics, it's a great thing to remember and point out. All right, from that perspective, that is a broad overview of Chapter 1. It's a little bit extended from the relation of your other video, so if you have any questions related to that in comparison to this, let me know. I appreciate all the effort that you've given so far, and I'm looking forward to the next few weeks together. Thanks so much.